I was 19 years old when I spent the two most terrifying days of my life lost in the Washington mountains, and what saved me was something I never imagined could exist. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 24 years old now, and this is the story of how a legendary creature, a real Bigfoot, kept me alive when I should have died alone in that forest. If you enjoy incredible and mysterious stories, leave your like now and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Turn on the notification bell to receive all updates. May 2020. The world was shut down because of the pandemic, people locked in their homes, and I was going crazy in my apartment in Seattle. I'd always been an active person, loved hiking and camping, and after 2 months trapped within 4 walls, I needed to get out. My parents were overprotective and wouldn't let me do the trail alone. But I was 19 years old and thought I knew everything. It was my first big rebellion, and it almost was the last thing I ever did in my life. I chose the Mount Rainier Trail, an intermediate route that I'd done once with my dad 2 years before. It seemed safe, well marked, and I had downloaded offline maps on my phone. What I didn't count on was how quickly the mountain weather could change. I left home at 6 in the morning on a Saturday, May 16th, leaving a note for my parents saying I'd gone to visit a friend in Tacoma. They'd never approve of the trail alone, so I lied. That lie almost cost me my life, and worse, caused the search teams to look in the completely wrong place for precious hours. The first 3 hours were perfect. Blue sky, fresh air, absolute silence except for bird song and the distant sound of running water. Just me and nature. I felt free for the first time in months. I took dozens of photos for my Instagram, breathed in that pure mountain air, smiled for selfies I'd never post. The forest was magical, giant trees that must have been hundreds of years old, soft green moss covering everything like a carpet, the distant sound of crystal clear streams. Around 10 in the morning, I stopped for a snack in a beautiful clearing with a view of the valley below. That's when I noticed the clouds accumulating rapidly on the horizon. Dark clouds, heavy, moving too fast to be natural. I checked the weather app, but I had no signal. The last I'd seen at home showed clear skies all day, 0 chance of rain. Mountains have their own rules, my dad always said that. I should have listened. I decided to turn back immediately, but that's when I made my second fatal mistake. The first being coming alone. On the way back, I saw a secondary trail that looked like a shortcut. It wasn't on the official map, but it seemed well used, with compacted soil and some broken branches indicating recent passage. It seemed to go in the right direction, descending the mountain at a more direct angle. I thought it would be faster, that it would save at least an hour. I entered it without thinking twice, without marking my position, without leaving any sign of where I was going. 15 minutes later, the trail simply disappeared. There were no more colored markings on the trees, no more defined path, just traces that could be animal trails or just natural patterns in the ground, just dense forest in all directions, identical trees surrounding me like green walls. I tried to go back, retrace my steps, but everything looked the same. That tree with the crooked branch, had I already passed it? Or was it another tree with a crooked branch? The forest had become an impossible maze. Trees, bushes, moss-covered rocks. I was completely lost. The panic started slowly, like a pressure in my chest that grew until it suffocated me. My heart raced. My hands started shaking. I took a deep breath, tried to calm myself using the techniques my therapist had taught me for anxiety. Count to 10. Breathe. You can handle this. My phone still had battery, 87%, but 0 signal. Not even 1 bar. I tried using the offline GPS, but without clear references of where exactly I was, it was useless. The blue dot on the map showed my location somewhere in the middle of a uniform green sea of forest. It could be anywhere within hundreds of square miles, and then it started to rain. It wasn't a normal rain. It was as if the sky had opened a floodgate, a violent storm, the kind that turns trails into rivers of mud in minutes. In less than 5 minutes, I was completely soaked. My light jacket wasn't made for this type of downpour. Water ran down my face, entered my eyes. My sneakers made sponge-like sounds with each step. Visibility dropped to almost zero. I could barely see 5 meters ahead. The wind shook the trees with frightening force, branches breaking and falling around me. One passed so close I felt the displaced air. I desperately searched for shelter, running without direction, just wanting to get out of the brutal rain. I found an overhanging rock that formed a small cavity. It wasn't big, but it blocked most of the rain. I squeezed in there, curled up against the cold and rough stone, hugging my backpack against my chest, trying to stay minimally dry. It was useless. I was already soaked to the bone. Water dripped from my hair, my clothes stuck to my body. I could feel the water inside my shoes, freezing horrible. It was 11:30 in the morning. I should be heading home now, taking a hot shower, telling my parents about the beautiful trail. Instead, I was lost, drenched, afraid. The storm lasted for hours, endless hours where all I could do was stay there shivering, listening to thunder echo through the mountains like distant artillery, seeing lightning illuminate the forest in white, ghostly flashes. I curled up against the rock, hugging my backpack, trying to stay minimally warm. My clothes were completely wet, my shoes soaked and heavy. The temperature had dropped brutally with the storm. I was starting to shake uncontrollably, my body trying to generate heat through muscle spasms. Hypothermia, I knew this from the survival classes my dad had insisted I take a few years ago. At the time I had complained, found it boring, unnecessary. Now those lessons were keeping me rational, telling me what I needed to do. I needed to find real shelter, a dry place protected from the wind. I needed to make a fire somehow, warm myself up, dry my clothes. I needed to move, because staying still meant letting my body cool to the point of no return. But how to do all this in the middle of a storm, with zero visibility? Around 3 in the afternoon, the rain finally decreased from torrential to heavy, then to moderate. It was still raining, but at least I could see where I was going. I decided to move. Staying still meant dying of cold slowly. I chose a direction that seemed to descend the slope. Descending meant eventually finding a river or larger stream, and rivers lead to valleys. Valleys have roads, roads have people. At least that's what I hoped. That's what I'd been taught. I walked for hours through the soaked forest, stumbling over slippery roots, slipping on moss-covered rocks. I fell several times, scraping knees and hands on stones and branches. My pants tore at the knee in a particularly ugly fall, and when I looked, I saw blood mixed with rainwater. It didn't matter. I needed to keep walking. The forest was an endless, hostile maze. Each tree looked identical to the previous one, each rock, each turn of the terrain. There were no distinctive landmarks, nothing that told me if I was going in the right direction or just walking in circles. The sun was setting, and soon it would be completely dark. My phone was at 58% battery. I had turned it off during the storm to conserve power, turning it on only briefly to check if there was signal. There never was. I found an area with denser trees, huge pines, whose low branches formed a kind of natural ceiling. It wasn't much, but it blocked part of the rain that had now decreased to a constant drizzle. The ground under the trees was drier, covered with layers of pine needles accumulated over years. I gathered wet branches, tried to make a campfire with the disposable lighter I always carried in my backpack. Impossible. Everything was too soaked. The sparks died before even touching the branches. I tried to find dry wood under fallen logs, but even there it was damp. No fire, no heat, no way to dry myself. I opened my backpack and took inventory of what I had. A 1-liter water bottle, half empty, 2 bottles of Gatorade, 4 granola bars, 2 protein bars, a turkey sandwich I'd made that morning, now probably destroyed in the wet backpack, an apple, a package of peanuts, my phone and portable charger, lighter, small pocket knife, basic first aid kit, sunscreen totally useless now, a change of clothes also soaked, that was everything. Provisions for 1 day, maybe 2 if I rationed severely. I never planned to stay longer, never planned any of this. I ate 1 granola bar, forcing myself to chew slowly despite the hunger gnawing at my stomach. I needed to make the food last. I drank water. My throat was dry from walking with my mouth open, breathing heavily. I carefully put everything back in the backpack. I needed to ration. I needed to think long-term, as terrifying as that was. Night fell quickly, as it always does in the mountains. One moment there was still grey, diffuse light. The next it was pitch black, total, complete, suffocating darkness. In cities there's always some light, street lights, windows, cars. Here there was nothing, just absolute darkness, and the sounds of the forest at night. Sounds that were terrifying when you couldn't see what was making them. I curled up between the roots of a giant pine, using my backpack as a pillow, trying to conserve body heat. I was shaking so much my teeth were chattering, the sound echoing in my head. Every sound of the forest scared me. Branches breaking, leaves moving, animals moving in the darkness. Bears. There were black bears in these mountains, my dad had warned me. Mountain lions too. Wolves maybe, though they were rarer. Coyotes definitely. And who knew what else? My mind created monsters in every shadow, in every sound. A branch cracked nearby, and my heart almost jumped out of my mouth. Just a deer, probably, or a raccoon, or a bear coming to investigate the smell of food in my backpack. I hugged the backpack tighter. I cried a lot that first night. I cried from fear, from regret, from missing my parents who didn't even know where I was. They thought I was safe at my friend's house in Tacoma. When they finally discovered the truth, when they finally started looking for me, where would they look? Tacoma, not here, not in the mountains. They'd search in the completely wrong place, wasting hours, maybe days, while I slowly died here. This realization was worse than the cold, worse than the fear. I had condemned myself with my lie. I tried to sleep, but it was impossible. Too cold, too scared, too uncomfortable. My body was exhausted, but my mind was racing, imagining scenarios, planning, panicking, calming down, panicking again in endless cycles. When the first light of morning finally appeared, filtering through the branches in pale, weak rays, Sunday, May 17th, my second day in the forest, I was exhausted but alive. My whole body ached, every muscle complaining. My head throbbed with pain, probably dehydration, despite having drunk water. My throat was dry and scratchy. My feet were in agony, huge blisters where my wet shoes had rubbed the soft skin. When I took off my shoes to check, I saw my socks were stained with blood. I put band-aids from my first aid supplies, but knew it wouldn't help much. I'd have to keep walking anyway. I ate half a protein bar and drank water, leaving the bottle half empty. I needed to ration, but I also needed energy to walk. It was an impossible balance. I turned on my phone quickly, 43% battery now, still no signal whatsoever. Not even emergency signal that theoretically works even without carrier service. I was in a truly remote area, far from any cell tower. I turned it off quickly to conserve battery. My only hope was to keep descending, eventually reach lower areas where there would be civilization, people, help. I continued down the mountain, following the logic of gravity. Water flows downward. Human settlements are in valleys, not on peaks. I walked for hours through forest that all looked the same. Pines, firs, giant cedars, dense fern bushes, small streams I had to jump or wade through, the icy water making my already injured feet scream in pain. The sun appeared for a few hours, but then the clouds returned. At least it wasn't raining. Around noon I heard a sound that gave me hope. Running water, stronger than the small streams I'd crossed. A river, or at least a large stream. I ran toward the sound, almost falling down the slope in my haste. It was a considerable stream, maybe 3 meters wide, crystal clear water running fast over smooth rocks. Clean mountain water, melted snow source. I filled my bottle, drank eagerly. The water so cold it hurt my teeth, but it was pure, refreshing, vital. At least dehydration wouldn't be my immediate problem. I decided to follow the stream. Water leads to larger rivers. Larger rivers lead to valleys. Valleys have roads, towns, people. That was my logic. My only strategy. I didn't have a compass, didn't have reliable GPS, but I had gravity and water. They would take me down. Eventually, I walked alongside the stream for hours, sometimes able to follow the bank, sometimes having to move away when the vegetation got too dense or the banks too steep. The water was my anchor, my guide. my hope. Noon passed, 1 o'clock, 2. My stomach growled with hunger, a real deep hunger, different from anything I'd felt before. I ate half of another granola bar, forcing myself to stop there, not to devour everything. 2.5 bars remained, the apple, the package of peanuts, food for 1 more day, maybe 2, if I really controlled myself. After that, I'd have to find food in the forest or starve. The afternoon brought more dark clouds accumulating on the horizon. No, please, not more rain, not more cold and dampness. I don't know if I can handle another night like this. But the forest doesn't care about please. Nature is indifferent to human suffering. At 3 in the afternoon, it started raining again. Not as hard as yesterday, but constant, cold, miserable. The temperature dropped immediately. I looked for shelter along the stream, found a partially hollow log covered by giant ferns. I squeezed inside, curled up, shivering, miserable. The rotten wood smelled of mold and earth, but at least it blocked the wind and most of the rain. That's when I heard the sound. A sound that wasn't wind, wasn't water, wasn't any animal I knew. It was deep, resonant, vibrating through the ground and air. A low, guttural moan that echoed between the trees impossibly. My heart almost stopped. Bear. It had to be a bear, a huge bear, very close. I stayed absolutely still inside the log, holding my breath until my lungs burned, counting the seconds. 100, 200, 300. Barely daring to breathe, convinced that any movement, any sound, would draw the creature to me. The sound approached. Heavy footsteps crushing branches, vegetation being pushed aside, something large moving through the forest with purpose. My eyes widened in terror. My hands pressed my mouth to prevent any sound from escaping. Please pass by. Please don't see me. Please. Then, through the rain and ferns, I saw it. And it wasn't a bear. It wasn't anything that made sense. It wasn't anything that should exist. It was something walking on 2 legs. Bipedal, but definitely not human. Very tall, maybe 2.5 meters, maybe more. It was hard to tell through the rain and vegetation, covered in dark, wet fur that glistened with rain. Arms too long to be human, reaching almost to the knees, absurdly wide shoulders, doorway width. The head was conical, with no visible neck, merging directly with the shoulders, a completely impossible silhouette. My brain refused to process for a moment. Can't be real, doesn't exist. I'm hallucinating from lack of food and hypothermia, but it was there, as solid and real as the surrounding trees. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever the name, that legendary creature was less than 10 meters from me. And I was hidden in a hollow log, with nowhere to run, no way to defend myself. My tiny pocket knife would be useless against something that size. My brain screamed for me to run, but my body was frozen in absolute fear. I stayed petrified, holding my breath until my lungs burned and black spots danced in my vision. Seconds seemed like hours. The creature stopped maybe 5 meters from the log where I was hiding. It slowly turned its head, sniffing the air. Could it sense me, hear me, smell me? My heart beat so hard I was sure it could hear it, a traitorous drum announcing my presence. Please don't see me, please don't see me. Then the creature did something completely unexpected. It slowly crouched down, with surprising grace for something so large, and picked something from the ground, a root or tuber that it pulled from the earth with ease. It cleaned the dirt against its furry thigh and began to eat, chewing thoughtfully. Its movements were deliberate, careful, almost human. It wasn't the violent, chaotic way I expected from an animal. It was controlled, intelligent. Then it stood up, examined the area around for another moment, then continued walking along the stream, disappearing between the trees and rain like a huge shadow. In 1 minute it was there, the next it had completely disappeared, only the sound of breaking branches in the distance marking its passage. When I could no longer hear it, when silence returned except for the constant rain, I finally breathed, a deep, shaky, gasping breath. My whole body was shaking, but it wasn't just from cold now. It was pure shock, adrenaline running through my system like electricity. I just saw a Bigfoot, a creature that shouldn't exist, that science says is myth, folklore, fraud, and it was there, real, solid, impossible to deny. I stayed in that log for another 2 hours, paralyzed with fear, unable to move. Every sound was it coming back. Every shadow was its huge silhouette. My brain couldn't process what I'd seen, oscillating between acceptance and denial. When the rain decreased to a drizzle and twilight began to tinge the sky dark grey, I forced myself to leave the log. I couldn't stay there. I needed to find better, safer shelter. Away from that place, away from that thing, whatever it was. I continued following the stream with trembling legs. Now every sound made me jump with fear. Every breaking branch, every moving leaf was the creature returning. Night was falling fast, and I needed to find shelter before complete darkness. I couldn't spend another night in the open, not after what I'd seen, not knowing there was something like that in the mountains with me. I found a rock formation, almost like a mini cave formed where large boulders had fallen on each other, leaving a protected space underneath. I barely fit curled up, but it blocked the wind, the rain, and offered some sense of security. Walls around me. I crawled in, ignoring how the tight space made my heart race with claustrophobia. I pulled my backpack behind me. I ate a third of a granola bar, all I allowed myself. I drank water directly from the stream before entering. My phone had 31% battery. I turned it on quickly to check signal. Nothing. I tried to send a text message to my parents anyway. Sometimes messages can get out even without apparent full signal. Lost Mount Rainier. East Secondary Trail. Following stream. Help. Send. Message not sent. I tried again. Failed. Battery at 28%. I turned it off before it died completely. I needed to preserve every percentage for when, if, I got signal. The second night was infinitely worse than the first. I was weaker, colder, more scared, and now I knew there was something else in the mountains besides bears and mountain lions, something that defied explanation, something primitive and powerful. My mind spun in circles, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe it was a man in a costume. But who would wear a costume in the middle of a storm in remote forest? And the movements were wrong for human. The proportion was wrong. Maybe it was a bear walking upright, but bears don't walk on two legs for more than a few meters, and definitely don't have those proportions, those long arms. There was no rational explanation, just the impossible one. I had seen a real Bigfoot. I slept in small, restless intervals, nightmares mixed with reality. I dreamed I was being chased through the forest by something huge and furry, woke up gasping, sweating despite the cold. Strange sounds echoed in the darkness outside my small cave, distant growls, howls. Or maybe it was just wind. Maybe it was just my imagination. Impossible to know. Once I woke up certain I heard heavy footsteps nearby, the sound of deep breathing. I froze, eyes wide in absolute darkness, seeing nothing but hearing everything. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then they continued moving away. Had it been real or just another nightmare? My mind was starting to fail, reality and imagination mixing dangerously. In the early morning, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, by the still complete darkness, I woke up shaking violently. Not normal tremors, but full-body convulsions I couldn't control. My body was entering real critical hypothermia. I knew the symptoms from the first aid classes I'd taken. Extreme, uncontrollable shaking, mental confusion, irresistible drowsiness, desire to just lie down and sleep. If I gave in to that desire, if I let my eyes close now, I probably wouldn't wake up. I forced myself to stay awake, biting my tongue until I tasted blood, pinching my arms, constantly moving fingers and toes, flapping my arms against my body, trying to generate heat through movement. I sang songs in a low voice, recited poems I'd memorized in school, anything to keep my mind active and awake. Just a few more hours until dawn. Just a few more hours. Hold on, Sarah. Hold on, you didn't come this far to die now. When the sky began to lighten, filtering weak grey light through the opening of my cave, Monday, May 18th, my second full day lost, I was in critical condition. Weak, dizzy, shaking, freezing even though it had finally stopped raining. I left the rock cavity with difficulty, my muscles so stiff I could barely move. I felt like I'd aged 50 years overnight. I stumbled to the stream, drank water with trembling hands. The water was so cold it made my teeth ache, but I needed hydration. I ate the rest of the granola bar I'd started yesterday, chewing mechanically. I took inventory of what remained. One granola bar, one protein bar, the apple, now bruised and brown, the package of peanuts, food for one more day maybe. After that, nothing. I needed to find help today. I wouldn't survive another night, not in this state. I continued following the stream, but my steps were slow, staggering as if I were drunk. My legs barely supported me. The muscles were exhausted, joints aching, feet a mass of blisters and blood. Each step was agony, but I kept going. Stopping meant dying. Simple as that. Around 9 in the morning, I judged by the weak angle of the sun through the clouds. My stomach began to hurt, not just from hunger, but from real cramps. My body was starting to consume itself, burning muscle because it had no more fat or sugar to burn. My vision began to darken at the edges occasionally, black spots dancing. Low blood sugar, acute malnutrition, hypothermia. My body was failing. I stumbled over a root and fell heavily to the wet ground, hands sinking in mud. I got up with difficulty, mud covering my already dirty and torn clothes. Blood from my scraped palms mixed with the dirt. I kept walking. I fell again an hour later. This time it took longer to get up, staying on my knees in the mud for long minutes, panting, crying. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm going to make it. Get up, Sarah. Get up and keep walking. It's this or die here. I got up staggering like a zombie and continued. Around noon, I started having serious hallucinations. I saw colored lights between the trees that couldn't be there. I heard music playing, soft and distant. I heard voices calling my name. Sarah, Sarah, where are you? My dad, my mum, my friends. It wasn't real, just my brain failing, dying slowly. I ignored the voices and kept walking. I saw a house through the trees. Finally, civilization. I ran toward it, laughing, crying. I got closer and it was just a rock formation, nothing like a house. My brain had invented it. I collapsed to the ground, sobbing in frustration and despair. I got up and continued. I saw a helicopter flying low. I screamed, waved my arms. It passed right by. It wasn't real. There was no helicopter. I teared up and kept walking. My mind was fragmenting, pieces of rationality being lost. But some deep, primitive part kept pushing me. Put one foot in front of the other. Breathe. Repeat. Survive. Around 2 in the afternoon, I fell for the 3rd time. This time, I couldn't get up immediately. I lay there on the wet, cold ground, looking at the grey sky through the bare branches of the trees, exhausted beyond anything I'd ever experienced. Is this how it ends? Am I going to die here, alone, less than 20 kilometers from civilization probably, because I was proud and stupid? My parents will search for me for days, weeks. Maybe they'll never find my body. I'll disappear into the forest like so many others before me. I closed my eyes. Maybe just a minute of rest. Just a minute, then I'll continue. I promise. Just a minute. Then I heard the sound again. That deep, resonant moan I'd heard 2 days ago that had terrified me. My eyes opened suddenly, adrenaline cutting through exhaustion. Not now. Please, not now. I don't have strength to run, can't defend myself. The creature emerged from the dense vegetation maybe 15 meters from me. Huge, imposing, impossible. Even more impressive under daylight without rain obscuring the view. The fur was dark brown, almost black in some areas, lighter and grayer in others, especially around the face. The face was almost human, but definitely not, with a prominent forehead, wide, flat nose, strong jaw, and the eyes. God, the eyes were deep, dark, intelligent. Too intelligent to be just animal. Our eyes met. I was lying on the ground, defenseless, waiting for the end. But the creature didn't advance aggressively. It approached slowly, cautiously, each step making the earth tremble slightly under its massive weight. It stopped about 4 meters away, observing me with those intelligent eyes. I could see huge muscles moving under the fur, strength enough to break me in half without effort. But it didn't attack, just watched, head tilted slightly, as if assessing the situation, deciding what to do with me. "I'm not going to hurt you," I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse and dehydration. Please don't hurt me. I'm lost. I'm dying. The creature made a soft sound. Not a growl or threat, but something almost questioning. Then it looked around the area, looked back at me, and did something completely unexpected. It turned and walked to an area of dense vegetation I hadn't noticed. Wild blackberry bushes, loaded with black fruits. It picked a handful of berries with surprising care for such large hands. Avoiding the thorns that would have torn my skin, it came back and placed the berries on the ground about a meter from me. Then it stepped back several paces. Watching, waiting. It was offering me food. A Bigfoot was offering me food. I looked at the juicy berries. I looked at the creature. It made that soft sound again, almost encouraging. Its eyes were kind, if I can use that word for something so wild. With trembling hands, I dragged myself closer and picked up some berries. They were large, ripe. Perfect. I put one in my mouth. The juice exploded, sweet and slightly tart. Wonderful. I ate those berries quickly, then more, taking all it had brought, staining my fingers and lips dark purple. When I finished, I looked at it again. Thank you, I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. I don't know if you understand, but thank you so much. The creature tilted its head again, then turned and went to a different tree, a wild apple tree, ancient, probably planted decades ago by some pioneer and now growing wild. It shook the trunk hard, and apples rained to the ground. It picked 5 or 6, came back, placed them near me. The apples were small, imperfect, probably bitter, but they were food, energy, life. I picked one and bit into it. It was sour, hard, but I didn't care. I ate that whole apple down to the core, then another. The creature watched, and I swear there was satisfaction in its posture. Then it pointed in the direction along the stream and made a broad gesture with its hand, a movement that clearly meant, "Come, follow me." It wanted me to follow it. Every survival instinct should have been screaming for me to run away. But run where? I was lost, dying. This creature had just fed me when it could have ignored me, or worse. Maybe it was my only chance. I tried to stand, but my legs gave out again, muscles trembling with exhaustion. The creature approached quickly, moving with surprising speed and grace for something so large. It extended a huge arm, the hand almost the size of my head. I hesitated only a second, then placed my small, fragile hand in its. The skin was rough, covered with thick fur, calluses from decades living in nature, but it was warm, surprisingly warm, like a heated blanket. It pulled me up with frightening ease, as if I weighed absolutely nothing. More than that, it was gentle, careful, not pulling too hard, supporting my weight while I found balance. I started walking beside it, and the creature adjusted its pace to mine, walking slowly when I went slowly, stopping when I needed to stop. Its natural stride would be huge. It could cover in minutes distances that took me hours, but it went at my pace, patient. We followed the stream downstream. Whenever I weakened, faltered, started to fall, it placed a huge but incredibly gentle hand on my back, supporting me, keeping me upright. It was the most surreal touch, terrifying and comforting at the same time. We walked for maybe an hour, maybe more. Time had lost meaning. Then we arrived at a place that changed everything, an area where the stream made a curve, creating a small protected valley. Hidden behind a dense curtain of vegetation was a cave, entrance not very large, but perfect for something the size of the creature. It carefully pushed aside the vegetation, revealing the interior. Inside was dry, protected from wind and rain. There were obvious signs that someone used this place regularly as a dwelling. Dry leaves arranged in an area like a bed, deep and soft-looking. Rocks arranged in a circle for a fire, old ashes indicating frequent use. Clean bones carefully stacked in a corner, remains of past meals but kept with almost hygiene. Dry twigs stored against a wall, obviously collected and kept for making fire. It was a home, primitive, but definitely a home. The creature's home. It gently guided me inside, gesturing for me to sit on the dry leaves. I obeyed, collapsing more than sitting, too exhausted to do anything else. The leaves were surprisingly comfortable, dry and soft, better than any place I'd slept in the last 2 days. The creature made a soft, almost comforting sound, then left the cave. I stayed there alone for maybe 10 minutes, half expecting it not to return, that it had brought me here and abandoned me. But it returned, arms full of food. Berries, more apples, roots it had dug up and cleaned, even some large mushrooms I hoped were edible. It placed everything in front of me in a generous pile, then sat near the entrance watching. I looked at the food, then at it. "Can I?" I asked, pointing at the food. It nodded, an unmistakable human movement. "Yes, eat." I ate slowly, my empty, aching stomach reacting to the sudden feeding. I needed to be careful not to get sick. The berries were sweet, the apples sour but tolerable, the roots surprisingly tasty with an earthy, nutty flavor. The mushrooms were a bit bitter, but I ate them anyway. Food, real nutrition, energy flowing back into my body. I ate until I couldn't anymore, then stopped, saving some apples for later. The creature watched, and there was something I can only describe as satisfaction in its posture. "You saved me," I said aloud, needing to verbalize it, making it real. "You didn't have to, but you saved me. Why? Why help a human?" The creature looked at me with those deep, intelligent eyes. Then it placed a huge hand over its chest, where the heart would be, and then pointed at me with a thick finger. It was a universal gesture that transcended species, connection, compassion. "You're in danger, I help." Simple as that. Tears filled my eyes. There are people in the world who would pass by someone dying in the street, but this creature, this being that the world says doesn't exist, had gone completely out of its way to save my life. "Thank you," I whispered through tears. "Thank you so much." I spent the rest of that afternoon in the cave, recovering strength, my body finally beginning to recover from the trauma of the last 2 days. The creature didn't stay inside with me, respecting my space, but remained near the entrance, a constant and comforting presence. Periodically, it would leave and return with more food. It found nuts, a type I didn't recognize but that were oily and nutritious. It came back with more berries from a different bush. It even fished and brought 3 small fish from the stream, placing them near me, still flopping. Fresh fish, protein. "You know I need to cook this, right?" I said, holding one of the fish. It looked at the fish, then at me, then at the circle of rocks. Then it did something extraordinary. It gathered some of the stored dry twigs and carefully placed them in the circle of rocks. It picked up 2 specific stones from a pile, obviously kept for this purpose, and began striking one against the other over the twigs. Sparks flew. One caught. A small flame was born, grew, spread through the twigs. In less than a minute, there was a small but strong fire burning. It knew how to make fire. A Bigfoot knew how to make fire. I looked at it with absolute amazement. "You're smarter than half the people I know." It made that soft sound I was beginning to recognize, which somehow seemed to mean contentment or perhaps amusement. I cleaned and skewered the fish on sticks, cooking them over the flames. The smell was incredible, protein cooking, fat crackling, my mouth filled with saliva. When they were ready, I ate 2 whole, then offered the third to the creature. "It's yours. You fished them. Take it." It hesitated, then carefully took the fish and ate it in 3 bites, bones and all. Then we sat on opposite sides of the fire, comfortable quietness between us. 2 different creatures, sharing a meal, sharing warmth, connected by unlikely circumstances. When the sun began to set, tinging the sky orange and pink through the cave opening, the creature added more twigs to the fire, keeping it alive. Heat, light, safety. For the first time in 3 days, I felt truly warm. I stopped shivering. My muscles began to relax. The constant terror that had been my companion began to recede. I sat near the flames, extending my hands, feeling the divine heat penetrate my frozen body. The creature sat on the other side of the fire, its face illuminated by the dancing light of the flames. It was majestic, primitive, yes, but with a dignity, a presence I'd never seen. Its eyes reflected the flames, and in that moment I saw something in them. Loneliness, deep and ancient loneliness. "You're alone here, aren't you?" I asked softly, my voice just above a whisper. The creature didn't respond verbally, of course, but something in its posture changed, shoulders dropping slightly, head lowering a bit, a silent admission. "I know what it's like to feel alone," I continued, words pouring out now. I've always felt different from other people, never quite fit in. It was always easier to be alone than to try to pretend to be something I'm not. That's why I love the forest so much. Here I don't have to wear a mask, don't have to perform. I can just be. The creature raised its head, looking at me directly. There was understanding in those eyes, I swear. A connection that transcended language, species, everything. Two lonely beings, finding each other in the most unlikely circumstances. You saved me not just because I was in danger, I whispered, understanding emerging, but because you saw something familiar in me. You saw someone lost, alone, separated from their own kind, like you. The creature made that soft sound, but there was a different quality now, sadder, more laden with emotion. I extended a hand across the fire, not too close, but in offering. It looked at my hand, then extended its. Our fingers didn't touch, but it was symbolic. Recognition, respect, connection. I slept that night in the warm, dry cave, for the first time in 3 days, feeling safe. The creature remained at the entrance, sitting with its back against the rock wall, watching, protecting me from any danger that might come from the dark forest. I woke up several times during the night and always saw it there, alert, guarding. It didn't sleep. It sacrificed its own rest to ensure my safety. The next morning, Tuesday, May 19th, my 3rd day lost, but first day feeling real hope, I woke up feeling stronger, still weak, still hurt, but definitely alive and recovering. The creature was outside, but returned quickly when it heard me moving. It brought more food, breakfast. This time it included honey, a large piece of comb dripping thick golden liquid. Honey! Oh my God, honey! I exclaimed, taking the comb reverently. It must have gone to a wild hive, risking stings to bring me this. I ate directly from the comb, pure sugar exploding in my mouth, instant energy flowing through my system. It was delicious, rich, perfect. Thank you, I said again, a word that had become my mantra. Thank you so, so much. After eating, I tried to communicate that I needed to find my way back, return home. I pointed at myself, then pointed vaguely in the direction I thought civilization might be, making walking gestures. Home. I need to go home. My family is worried. They're looking for me. The creature observed me for a long moment, head tilted thoughtfully. Then it nodded yes, a deliberate and clear head movement. It understood. It would help me find the way. It left the cave, gestured for me to follow. We left together. The day was finally clear, blue sky without clouds, sun shining through the tree branches. Beautiful. The forest was beautiful when it wasn't trying to kill me. The creature began to walk with clear purpose, not simply wandering, but going deliberately in a specific direction. It knew this forest in a way no map could teach. Every tree, every rock, every turn of the terrain was familiar to it. This was its world, its home for who knows how many years or decades. We followed the stream again, but at a different angle than I'd followed before. It guided me through the easiest path, avoiding areas of too dense vegetation, treacherous rocks, difficult terrain. When there were inevitable obstacles, it helped me, offering a strong hand to pull me over fallen logs, guiding me around muddy areas. We walked for hours. The creature continually adjusted its pace to mine, demonstrating infinite patience. We stopped frequently to rest, for me to drink water, for it to give me more food that it apparently carried in some kind of primitive pouch made of woven bark. At one point, we reached an area of steep rocks, almost a small cliff we needed to descend. I'd never make it alone, not in my weakened state. The creature simply picked me up, lifting me like I was a small child, and carried me through the difficult section with the agility of a mountain goat. Then it gently placed me back on the ground at the base, checking if I was okay before continuing. Around noon, I heard something that made my heart jump with joy and terror simultaneously. A mechanical sound, distant but unmistakable. A helicopter. This time, it wasn't a hallucination. It was real, the sound growing louder, then diminishing as it moved. It was flying over the area, probably searching for me. My parents must have finally discovered the truth, that I wasn't at my friend's house, that I had disappeared. Search and rescue teams had been mobilized. They were looking for me. I looked at the creature with sudden tears in my eyes. They're looking for me. I'm going to be rescued. I'm going home. The creature looked at the sky, following the sound of the helicopter until it disappeared in the distance, then looked back at me. There was something in its eyes hard to define. Not exactly sadness, perhaps resignation, acceptance that our time together was ending, that I belonged to the human world, not this wild world. It knew. It always knew. We continued walking in the general direction where the helicopter had come from. The forest began to change gradually, getting less dense, more sunlight penetrating through the canopy. Signs of human presence began to appear. Old markings on trees, faded signs attached to trunks indicating trails, even occasional trash, plastic bottles and wrappers discarded by inconsiderate hikers. Civilization. We were approaching areas used by humans. Then I saw through the trees ahead an opening, and through the opening a road. A real paved road, not a dirt trail but solid asphalt, and there were vehicles. I saw several cars and trucks parked, people in uniforms moving around. A search and rescue operations base had been set up. Tents, equipment, maps spread on portable tables. I stopped abruptly, hand flying to my mouth. They searched for me. They actually organized a search operation for me. The creature stopped too, remaining in the deep shadows of the last trees, instinctively avoiding being seen by humans. It didn't dare go closer. That line from forest to road was a barrier it wouldn't cross. We turned to face each other. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Two unlikely beings, connected by extraordinary circumstances. "Thank you," I whispered, tears flowing freely down my face now. "You saved my life when you had no reason to care. I don't know why, I don't know how you knew I needed help, but you found me, fed me, protected me. I'll never forget. I'll never tell anyone, I promise. Your secret is safe with me. You deserve to live in peace without being hunted or studied." The creature took a step forward, slowly, hesitantly, as if unsure. It extended a huge hand. I held it without hesitation now, my two small hands barely able to encompass one of its. We stood like that for a moment, human and Bigfoot, connected through something deep and indefinable. Gratitude, respect, even affection, perhaps even friendship, as impossible as it seems. It squeezed my hand gently, carefully conscious of its strength, then released it. It placed its hand over its chest, over its heart, then pointed at me. Then it turned and disappeared into the forest. One moment it was there, solid and imposing. The next, it had completely disappeared between the trees and shadows, as if it had never existed, only the slight whisper of moving leaves marking its passage. I stood there for another minute, looking at the forest, part of me wanting to follow, to stay in that world. But I had a family, a life, responsibilities. I belonged to the human world, for better or worse. I turned and ran toward the road, shouting with all the strength I had left, "Help! I'm here! Someone help me!" People immediately ran in my direction. Paramedics with medical kits, police officers, forest rangers, all converging, arms wrapping around me, blankets being thrown over my shoulders, urgent questions being shouted. "Are you hurt? Can you walk? What's your name?" "I'm Sarah Mitchell," I managed to say, my voice failing. I'm okay now." They quickly took me to an ambulance parked on the roadside. My parents arrived minutes later in their own car, having been called as soon as the radio transmitted that I'd been found. My mother got out before the car completely stopped, running and enveloping me in a desperate hug. "Sarah! Oh God, Sarah! We thought we'd lost you." My father wrapped both of us, his face showing more emotion than I'd seen in years, tears running down his cheeks. "We're sorry, Sarah," he said, voice hoarse. "Sorry for being so rigid, so controlling. Sorry for not listening to you. When we found out you'd lied, that you were really lost in these mountains, we thought." His voice failed. "No, it was my fault," I cried against his shoulder. "I was proud and stupid. Should have listened to you. Should have been honest. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I told them my story, or at least an edited version. I told them about getting lost, about the storm, about surviving 3 days alone, finding berries and apples, following the stream using basic survival skills Dad had taught me. They listened, absorbing every word, relieved I was alive, but I didn't tell them about the creature. Didn't tell them about it finding me, feeding me, sheltering me, guiding me to safety. How could I? Who would believe? And more importantly, I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want teams sent to search for it, to capture it, study it as a specimen in a laboratory. It had saved me when it could have ignored me, when any predator would have seen me as easy prey. It had shown kindness, compassion, empathy, qualities many humans don't demonstrate. It deserved to be left alone, deserved its secret, its privacy, its freedom. It would be my secret to carry, my debt of silence. They took me to the hospital in Seattle. I was examined completely. I had moderate hypothermia, though recovering, dehydration despite having drunk lots of water, acute malnutrition, multiple scrapes and bruises, severe blisters on my feet, possible onset of pneumonia, but nothing permanently harmful, nothing that time and care wouldn't heal. I was told repeatedly that I was very lucky. Surviving 3 days in storm conditions in the mountains without adequate equipment, without extensive survival training, was remarkable. Most people don't survive, a doctor said, shaking his head with admiration. Especially young people without experience. You're incredibly resilient, young lady. You're lucky. You're a survivor. I didn't feel lucky. I felt grateful. Grateful that an impossible creature had decided my life was worth saving, that I deserved help, even though I was from a completely different species. In the days and weeks that followed, while I recovered at home, treating blisters, gaining weight back, overcoming psychological trauma from the experience, I constantly thought about those 3 days, about the terror, about the loneliness, about it, about the creature that defied everything science said was true. I read everything I could find online about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Yeren, all the variants around the world. There were hundreds of reports, thousands throughout history. The vast majority dismissed as fraud, misidentification, mass hysteria. But many reports, surprisingly many when you really look, described exactly what I'd experienced. Curious, but peaceful creatures, avoiding humans generally, but occasionally interacting, helping lost people, guiding them to safety, offering food, protecting children who wandered off. There was a consistent pattern that the mainstream scientific community refused to recognize, dismissing all reports without real investigation. But why would so many cultures around the world, without contact with each other, have surprisingly similar legends about hominid creatures living in remote forest? Coincidence or something more? I began to believe these creatures exist. Not many, probably. Maybe just small, fragmented populations in the most remote places in the world, intelligent enough to avoid humans, to remain hidden, to survive in small numbers where science doesn't look adequately. Not monsters, not mindless animals, but intelligent, conscious beings, perhaps even more compassionate and wise than many humans. They deserved protection, not exploitation. They deserved privacy, not media attention. They deserved to exist in peace. 3 months later, August 2020, when the world was still struggling with the pandemic, but I had completely recovered physically and emotionally, I returned to that area of the mountains. Not alone this time. I took my dad, telling him I wanted to do the trail properly this time, face my trauma, overcome my fear. He understood, supported, came with me. We did the official trail together, but at a certain point when he was distracted admiring the view, I briefly moved away. I found the stream. I recognized the area. I followed it until I found the cave. It was still there, hidden behind the curtain of vegetation. I carefully pushed aside the branches and looked inside. The cave was empty. The leaves that formed the bed had been scattered. The circle of rocks for fire was undone. The stored twigs had disappeared. It had moved, abandoned this place, maybe for safety in case someone searched after my rescue. Maybe it simply moved periodically, never staying too long in one place. I wouldn't know, but I left something, a waterproof plastic box I'd brought, filled with gifts, non-perishable foods I knew it would appreciate, assorted nuts, dried fruits, granola and protein bars, dark chocolate, a large jar of pure honey. I placed the box at the back of the cave with a note written on paper protected by plastic. To my friend of the forest, thank you for saving my life. You showed more kindness than many humans. I hope you are well and safe wherever you are now. I will never tell your secret. You deserve to live in peace. With eternal gratitude, Sarah. I don't know if it returned, if it found my gift, or read my note. It probably can't read English anyway. But I felt I needed to do something, leave some acknowledgement of what it had done, a gift in return for the gift of life it gave me. I returned to where Dad was, joined him. We continued the trail together. He never knew I moved away. Never suspected anything. The secret remained mine. Now, 4 years later, I'm 24 years old. My life changed completely because of that experience. I chose to study conservation biology at university, graduated last year. I chose this field specifically because of those 3 days. I want to protect wildlife, protect habitat, create sanctuaries where animals and perhaps other creatures can exist without destructive human interference. I now work with the National Park Service, initially based at Olympic National Park, but frequently traveling to other areas. My work involves visitor education about how to respect nature, monitoring at-risk species, trail maintenance, and protection of critical habitat. And silently, secretly, I do something more. When I see reports of Bigfoot sightings in certain areas, I don't automatically dismiss them like my colleagues do. Instead, discreetly, I work to increase protection of those areas. I propose expansion of non-interference zones. I argue for reduction of human access. I create bureaucratic barriers for loggers and developers. Slowly, carefully, I build sanctuaries where, if these creatures exist, they can live without threat. I never confirm, never deny, just create safe space. People frequently ask me why I care so much about remote wilderness areas most will never see. Why fight so hard to protect forests that could be used for economic development, for resources, for human recreation? I just smile and say that nature saved me once. Now it's my turn to save nature. It's true. Just not the whole truth. The complete truth is that I owe my life to something science says doesn't exist. A creature that demonstrated more humanity, more compassion, more kindness than many humans demonstrate in their entire lives. That fed me when I was starving, warmed me when I was freezing, protected me when I was vulnerable, guided me when I was lost, without asking anything in return, without expecting reward. Sometimes when I'm alone on patrol in deep forest, far from everyone, I stop and listen, really listen. I hear the sounds of the forest, birds singing, wind whispering through branches, water running over stones, squirrels chattering, owls calling, life in its thousand forms. And occasionally, very occasionally, I hear something more, a deep, resonant sound that doesn't fit any known category, that echoes between the trees impossibly, a sound that makes me smile, that fills my heart with joy and gratitude, because I know that somewhere in these mountains, somewhere in these ancient deep forests, it's still there, or others like it, surviving, persisting, existing against all odds and expectations. And as long as people like me continue protecting these wild places, they'll have refuge, a place to live in peace, in secret, in safety, away from cameras and hunters and scientists and all the threats the modern world represents. That's my promise. My life's mission, my debt being paid one day at a time, one forest at a time, one sanctuary at a time. My message to you hearing this story: nature is more mysterious, more magical, more wonderful than our limited science admits. There are things in this world we don't fully understand, not because they don't exist, but because they're wiser than us, wise enough to remain hidden, wise enough to avoid the destructive spotlight of human attention. If you're ever lost, physically or metaphorically, remember that help can come from the most unlikely and unexpected sources. Keep your mind open, keep your heart open. Don't dismiss the impossible just because it defies your expectations or beliefs. And always, always respect wild creatures and wild places. Treat them with reverence and care, because you never know when you might need them. Never know when they might save you. I was saved by a Bigfoot, A creature the world says is myth, fraud, impossibility. But I know the truth. It exists. They exist. And they deserve our respect, our protection, our compassion. That truth is engraved in every beat of my heart, in every breath I take, in every choice I make. I'm alive today because something impossible decided I deserved to live, that my life had value even to a creature of completely different species. And I'll spend the rest of my life honoring that gift, ensuring that it and others like it can continue existing, in peace, in secret, in safety. This is my solemn promise, my life debt being paid. Thank you, my friend of the forest. Wherever you are, I hope you know you saved more than just a life that day. You changed a life. You gave me purpose, meaning, mission. For that, I'll be eternally grateful.